Sure, I can go ahead and start. My name is Divya Goel. I'm the VP of Fan Engagement. I have a dual identity currently. I'm also FanCapital, and then I also am the VP Fan Engagement for Williams Racing, so continuing the F1 theme this week. Um, FanCapital is a technology provider and platform essentially for Williams Racing, as well as Alex Albon and Logan Sargent at this point, bringing on a couple other clients, but excited to talk about technology, the intersection of marketing, and how we are keeping up technology to stay culturally relevant.
Hi everyone, Flávia. I work for Restaurants Brand International. I've been there for 6 years, so I've been currently with Burger King, but also work for Popeyes. Always leading advertising, so either above the line in terms of linear or social, but also very involved in categories. So I'm very excited to be here and talk a little bit more on how do we use our brands to make sure we're always very culturally relevant. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mariana. I work at Campbell's. I've been at Campbell's for almost 4 years, and my background is CPG and a little bit of innovation. I started my career at P&G, brand, sales. Then I moved into Coty, color cosmetics, and then I started working at a startup on innovation. And in Campbell's, I lead the growth marketing for Latin America and global exports. So it's basically every country except US and Canada. So it's really interesting. And of course, we need to be relevant in each country that we're selling. So I'm excited about this conversation and the diverse backgrounds we all have.
Hi, I'm Vicky. I lead brand and communications at Barry's, which is the best workout in the world, trademarked, which is very important for brand. I've been there around 8 years. We have a little over 80 studios globally. Before that, I was part of the team at SoulCycle, started my career in brand all the way back when there were magazines at Condé Nast.
Love that. We're all best friends. You all know me by now, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. We're here to talk about cultural relevance, which I know is a huge topic that we could probably spend years on. But what are your brand's role in culture today? If you could kind of break that down, each of you, all of you.
On the F1 side, I'll tackle Williams first. I said we have Williams, Alex, and Logan. But on the Williams front, I think it's trying to become culturally relevant again. So for those of you who don't know the history of Williams Racing, they are a quintessentially British racing team. Doralton Ventures bought them about 3-4 years ago now. And so much like MoneyGram and Haas, but we now have a U.S. contingent here. And so I work out of the New York office. So I think when it comes to these, our 4 top markets are U.S., U.K., Australia, and Canada. And so we have a really big question of how do we take the old school 60-plus-year-old white male sitting on his couch and turn him into a new age Formula One fan with a resurgence and new money and an influx into our team. So for us, it's how do we figure out what content and what digital products resonate for a newer generation of fan. And what we're seeing right now is tremendous growth in both the US and UK markets where we haven't seen growth before, with US actually being our biggest driver of fan growth over the last, I would say, 2 years, arguably. And where we've been able to extend that is, although, and admittedly, our car doesn't do well on the track currently, we're actually third in the paddock when it comes to digital engagement and digital traffic to site. So for us, it's how do we turn that story and the story of our founder, Sir Frank Williams, into something that resonates with a younger crowd at this point.
Yeah, I think we resonate a little bit with what you just said. I think in terms of QSR, which is the fast food industry, we have to be in cultural moments because it's such a clustered one that is how we find relevancy amongst our guests. But as you mentioned, we also kind of over-index with the older generation, I would say. That person who used to eat Burger King when they were younger and they have that nostalgia, but which is great, is our core audience. But our challenge is how to keep our relevancy culturally in the younger generation. We try to tap into partnerships and cultural, social moments with different trends and whatnot. And also, for example, I think a good example for Burger King, we have a few years of a partnership with VMA, which is it does young, super young, does skew very young. So it keeps us relevant in that audience, which is music, it's pop culture, a lot of famous artists. And then I think one good example that we did in Popeyes, we saw last year a trend called girl dinner. And TikTok, super relevant for the younger audience. And we just jumped in the opportunity and we launched an item on our app called Girl Dinner. So basically that drove a lot of sales with that item, kind of mirroring what we saw on the trend on TikTok. And that's how we try to keep our brands very relevant in the younger audience, which is a challenge for every single QSR nowadays.
On our side, I'm gonna just talk on Goldfish. It's one of our brands. In the U.S., it has been a historic kids brand, so it's also a nostalgic brand for teens and like older people. I'm from Colombia, so I didn't grow up with Goldfish, and the difference that we see with each country is in the US, they have tapped into that nostalgia on older people that used to grow up and eat goldfish. So now we're launching spicy goldfish with different flavors in and out, tapping into that need of wanting to eat a snack different from chips or whatever other snack, and it became another source of volume for the brand. Now it's really popular on kids, so now we tapped into older adults. So now we're being culturally relevant with flavors, being fun, having in and outs, etc. And in international markets, we're just starting, so we need to be relevant. Nobody knows what like the brand, so it's how do I enter into new market and I become relevant and I compare with the other sources of snacks out there for kids. So we have to play different strategies, and that's the interesting part of our job, to see how am I going to talk to a kid in Mexico or in the UK versus in the US.
I think for us, Barris has been around for 25 years. A lot of people don't know that. We effectively founded the boutique fitness category that you've seen explode in the years since. I think first and foremost for staying culturally relevant, our product has stayed very much the same since it was founded 25 years ago, and the product works. So I don't have to think about reinventing like what our offering is to a community. It's still the best workout in the world. People come there to like get in shape, to feel good about themselves, to live a healthier, better life. We have been able to create an environment which feels cool and unique in that space, with a very, very trademarked look and feel of red lighting, a dim lit kind of room, creating a party/atmosphere when you're working out, which is not wasn't clued in as what people were doing when it came to fitness at the time. We've also been able to kind of grow in a very, very intentional way. We didn't just open 60 studios, when we had success in 1998. We've pinpointed cities, markets, glued in on an audience. And through that, we've been able to create a community which is elite, but not elitist. So we continue to get buy-in. People want to be part of what we're creating. And that was true in 1998 when Demi Moore walked through the doors, and it's true today when we just did a partnership with Dua Lipa. So I think for us, it's like the product works. How can we continue to take that and be relevant with the communities we're opening in today?
Love that. Okay, so we know that cultural relevance drives growth, obviously. Are there examples that you've inserted your brand into the cultural zeitgeist and been so excited you saw growth sort of immediately? I asked because Chelsea from Swoon today talked about Barbie. They got, I don't want to say lucky because she put a lot of hard work into it, but Barbie really kicked some ass. And then Duracell, who I know is a sponsor of you guys, because he was talking about that today, that cool car. He was talking about how they worked with Ariana, that's how you say her name, right? For Vanderpump Rules. Did y'all know? Yeah, after she like did a thing, was like, I can buy my own damn batteries. So do you guys have any examples like that?
Yeah. So for us, I think a big one is actually we have played into the gamification space. So as we see new technologies kind of forming, what we realize is there's really sticky fan engagement to be had. And so we've built products specifically with Williams and even with Alex now, where you basically log in, we get your information at a very like base level, but we're providing the value of gamification for that. So every time that we have a race, for example, if you download the Williams app right now, you'll be prompted to log in. And then for every single race that we have, you're prompted to come back and redeem a badge. You're prompted to come back and play games. You're prompted to come back and really leaning to that gaming element. And we're continuing to build on that. Williams has just actually launched, well, I say just launched, but it launched a couple months ago, a full-on gaming club now. So what we realize is we're really trying to play in that gamification space where people then, for lack of a better word, are getting a bit addicted to what we want to do and come back. The first year, I think we had 80 people redeem every single race badge. Last year, we had 736 people versus the 81st. So we're seeing exponential growth, and I think at this point now we have a couple thousand that are on track to continue to redeem all their race badges throughout the year. So we provide that engagement and that gamification that really what we've learned speaks to the core of why people are kind of addicted and come back to these platforms, which then on top of that provides us with tremendous commercial value on the back end. So we're taking what is culturally relevant, transforming it into a digital or sticky touch point for our clients. Alex does the same thing. You come in, you create an identity unique with Alex Albon, and then right now we have a passport. So every race live feed that you tune into with Alex, you get your own passport stamp, essentially. So that is also creating stickiness for Alex, which then we can go monetize off the back end as well. So for us, it's how do we take the cultural nature and what behaviors are being driven culturally and turn them into something that creates returning fan engagement.
Yeah, I think other than like brand activations that I mentioned, like VMAs and like tactical ideas that we see on social for trend, like to jump into trends. I think, I guess, a big example, not wanting to brag, but
brag away. That's what this is here for.
A good example of just leveraging a cultural moment of football, American football, and having people gathering in their houses to eat. Usually people order wings or among other things, but wings is a big one. And we at Popeyes, we leveraged that opportunity of launching our first Super Bowl ad, launching as well our new platform of wings with different sauces. So basically we saw an opportunity of getting that cultural relevant moment, not only a Super Bowl ad and a Super Bowl moment, but tying to a product that we understood it was natural to that moment. I guess that is brought a lot of results, of course, and the launch of the wings are doing really, really good overall.
That's awesome. Now I'm hungry. So Goldfish understood the trends of what people were wanting to and craving to snack. So we just launched the Goldfish Crisps that are a blend of a goldfish and a potato chip. So it's light and it's not as greasy as a potato chip, and it's leveraging on what people are looking for. We want flavors, so we have bold flavors, and that's how we're doing innovation. Like, what are people really looking for? What are they craving? So that's a really good example, and actually it became the best launch in the past few years that we've had. I hope you go and find some. And I have an example in Mexico. We had a great launch for our condensed soups in Mother's Day. So it's how to connect on Mother's Day and using the product. It's not like you have to cook, but how through the soup you're connecting. You are having the family moment. So it's called cucharadas de amor. That's like love in spoons. So it became a great campaign where we connected what consumers were looking for, how to connect it with our product, which in this case was our soup.
On our side, because we have a product which is an experience, we kind of know that our people want more of Barras in kind of their lifestyle everywhere. So we've done some pretty unexpected initiatives for a fitness brand. We have partnerships with Don Julio Tequila, where we had a whole program called Treadmill and Tequila. We launched it in 2017.
Perfect marriage.
Right? We launched it in 2017. My CEO let me roll with it. I thought it was going to be a little bit like, what's going on here? Why are we bringing bartenders in to mix margaritas? What we did was we hosted happy hour classes on a Friday night. People want to get their sweat in, and then they want to go for drinks with their friends. So we just like merged the two for them. The first Friday we did it, we had lightness on our Friday time slots. We sold out the classes, and I threw people out the studio at 11 p.m. And what that was for us was a case study, is like our community were craving more and more moments to party together, which post-pandemic has just been even more of a signifier to us that we need to create these more moments of engagement for our brand, which is continuing to make us culturally relevant. This past year, we did celebrate our 25th birthday. We spent a lot of money, all funded by amazing brand partners, and hosted 800 people at a Diplo concert in Barras, at a Barras party, followed by a class for over 250 people. And it was unlike anything anyone had seen in the fitness space, merging kind of fitness, entertainment, and a party lifestyle, which is what the consumer wants from us right now. On the other flip side of that, we're seeing with Gen Z that like body image is changing a little bit, how hard they want to work out is changing a little bit. So the curiosity is a thing. So on the flip side, to a Don Julio partnership, we're also actively doing non-alcoholic partnerships right now and happy hours and creating kind of other moments for the community and just being really aware of trends and what our current audience wants from us.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, it's such a scary world now. I mean, look, Bud Light, right? Like it's a really scary world when it comes into cultural relevance. And when do you listen to the data and you say, let's go for it? Or when I was listening to a podcast with the CMO of ELF. I don't know if you follow her. She's fascinating. And she said something called the manual override, where she said that all the data is pointing one way, and sometimes she has to manual override because she's like, this shit is not going to fly. I don't care what the data shows. Has there been a time, and I'm sure not all y'all can answer this. I know that you guys work for some big brands. Have there been a time where the data maybe showed something and you went with it and you were like, this did not hit? You guys can't share. That's all right. You can talk about someone else. You talk shit about another brand?
Oh, I mean, I actually think, and I don't really have a specific example of it, at least not one that I'm allowed to share with everybody.
Sure.
But I think we oftentimes in the F1 space see it with commercial partnerships. And I think, the way that MoneyGram and Haas has done it, they said that they married their behaviors and their consumers, right? But I think we see that a lot of times. There's a lot of individuals and a lot of companies out there that are very interested in getting into sports and getting and dipping their toe in. And all the data says this should work, this should work, this should work. I would say that arguably there are a lot of commercial partnerships where people will dip their toe in. I would say that the floor, too, to get into an F1 team right now for a partnership is high. If you think of what a traditional value would be for any sort of given rights or attribution or sponsorship, just because, you see the logo soup on the cars. Last year when I was doing this in Austin, I had my team kit on and it was 15 logos on one shirt, right? So I would say sometimes they hit, sometimes they don't. I'd say more often than not, unless that due diligence is done, there have been a couple of failed partnerships or affiliations, some that come in at a lower level, which is why now the data is skewing to everybody paying more to get in so that both companies are more and highly invested in that partnership. It does, unfortunately, become a little more difficult for brands to dip their toe into the water if they want, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 attribution, but it also, on the larger side, almost guarantees that you're getting the investment that really is deserved from both the F1 team and the partner sponsor.
Yeah, and then talking about the data, obviously you guys learning constantly about your customer, both. We can both. What sort of technologies are you guys using? Is it social listening? Is it other things? Like, what allows you to build and understand who your consumer or customer is?
For social, we leverage a lot our social listening tools. Actually, throughout the whole company, for all the 4 brands that RBI owns, something that we do as a process. So, in terms of launching a new product, whenever we do go out and we launch, social listening is the first thing that we do in the first week or even like first hour, day, so we can understand. For example, I'll go back to the wings. We have 5 different sauces. Through social, we have a feeling which ones are selling best, or if one is really, there's a backlash of the taste, is too fiery, is too spicy. So we try to learn from that sentiment that we get from social listening, and we kind of try to address if it's either from an innovation standpoint, or do we have to have a community management to address it. So we do actually leverage a lot social listening tools, not only to make sure that we're getting the sentiment out there, but also to track what are the things that we need to improve, especially from a guest service standpoint.
The majority of our innovation is based on social listening and also understanding the trends that are happening. So we have we use this platform where it integrates, for example, what are people eating in restaurants? What are they posting on and talking in social media? What groceries are they buying? What types of drinks are they having out in a bar? Because we get inspiration from restaurants or even QSR, like truffle. Is it something, a flavor people are really wanting to buy a pasta with truffle? So we integrate all those insights and also with the social listening, and that's how we start creating concepts and then testing it, etc. But I hope we could be as fast and agile as you guys are in social listening. But I think the overall sense is, are you really listening and understanding what your consumers want?
And then your marketing teams, do you guys build out, so it's obviously there's the overall arching sort of brand identity and cultural relevance and all of that, but then you obviously all have very different markets, right? Like Minneapolis berries versus Hampton berries probably looks a bit different, and then the different countries. Is that how sort of the planning goes in? Like, do you look at it overarching, like this is what we need to stay true to, and then you drill it down, or like how does that look for you guys?
We do. I think we are very humble in the way we approach the brand. Like, we are very fortunate to have had Jennifer Lopez do an SNL skit on Barry's without any of us knowing. So I could walk around like everyone
awesome.
Must know what Barry's is, right? We don't. We kind of go into every market with the, hey, this is who we are. Come try us, without without any kind of we're just going to open the doors and expect people to come to us because we were successful in London and we already have Dubai. So when we approach Minneapolis, it's like building community from the ground up. We go very grassroots with our community building and our marketing. So that's replicated wherever we are, but kind of it's not like we don't have partnerships where we're always going with the same restaurant group when we do happy hours. We're like, what's cool in Minneapolis? And that is sending someone from HQ to the ground there to uncover that market, to lean in, to find out who their influential people are, who the cool mom on the PTA is, who you really want to get in. It's like we go grassroots, and I think that's one thing that as we scale, we have to continue to do, and we continue to kind of invest in, because you can be, for us, we need that core community. We can't just listen to the big picture on social media and know that we'll be able to drive that one-on-one community interaction that we need.
Right, and I guess the same thing with the Campbells. It's not rinse and repeat for every country, right?
Yeah, we operate, and I think companies go through waves of, we have one brand and it has to be global and we need to expand, and it has to be the same logo, the same flavor, the same everything, and that's not how it works. So in other countries, in Latin America, in Asia, people buy smaller sizes. So let's start with something so basic as size. In US, everyone goes to Costco and has like this goldfish. You go to Europe, you don't have the space to store it, right? It's not the way how people buy. So we need to think in sizes. We need to think about flavors as well. I have a good example. In Mexico, the original goldfish, which is cheddar, they tried it and they said it doesn't taste like cheese. It's very plain, a very plain flavor for them, because they have a very I would say specific palate. They like very very bold flavors, like very spicy, very like cheese flavor. So we had to change and have extra cheddar to become like our mother brand. So those are the kind of things we need to understand. And if it's cheddar's number one sales in US, it doesn't imply that it's going to be number one in the rest of the world. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll jump in because I was also before. I've been in RBI for 6 years, so I've been in a few different roles, but I was in global as well, and we also had the same challenge with. I think the way we approach from a brand standpoint is we have like an overarching strategy. The way it has to cascade in a way that it's easy to reference back to that overarching strategy. So I will use your example. Within the overarching strategy, we have gaming. How do we cascade using, if one type of game is relevant in Brazil but is not relevant in, I don't know, Spain, like we kind of find a way to cascade, making sure that it's always about the same strategy, but being local and regionalized, right? I think the product goes in the same way. Like if we launch a chicken sandwich that is super spicy in the US, not necessarily is going to be super spicy in Asia or in Mexico and whatnot. So we have the global team necessarily to make sure that the overarching strategy for the branding, positioning, advertising, but also innovation is very strong. So countries can know how to deploy differently, but being true to the core and value of the brand. I just wanted to piggyback from what you said.
Yeah, I would argue that F1 and sports is a bit different, right? F1 is, I've done NFL, NBA, lacrosse, and I would say that even though a lot of them consider themselves global, the NBA especially, I've never seen a more global sport than F1, simply because the variety of locations. We don't have a home race. We don't have the car doesn't change normally. We'll do special engine covers and liveries for certain locations, but the cars, the sponsors, everything like that stay the same. Our colors are never going to change. The product that we're offering is never going to change. It's always the same product. So how do we build stories around markets that are relevant? So what we've realized is, I highlight this again, the US market is younger. They tend to be 18 to 24. They tend to want to be educated on it. A lot of them don't even know all the tires. I didn't know all the tires when I started in this business. They don't know what the rear wing means, the front wing, how the aerodynamics change. You go over to the UK and you try and explain to them what tires are, and they look at you because they're like, you're talking down to me now. Like, I've known this since I was born. So for us, it's how do we tailor the stories and what makes Williams special? And then for Alex, it's even different because he has a very large base and he's Thai. So how do we really make that apparent? And in this time, it's actually explaining to Alex, and we've done a lot of education with him on, there are a lot of AAPI fans that are within the US. Your target market might actually not be Asia. It might be US based. And so how are we creating content for him, for his platform and for his channels that, and not going to lie here, Alex's typical fan is, I would argue, 13 to 17 and female. Just what we see. It's a lot of girls that are coming out to his meet and greets. He has a lot of teen, tween, and in-between fans. And so how do we make products and understand and get him to understand with all the brand research that we've done, that is a heavily monetizable area for him that then we can build products for him to engage.
All right, I'll ask one more question, then I'll open it up because you guys are really cool, and I know there's a lot of questions out there. I talk to a lot of marketers. Obviously, it's my job, and they often say that, especially since COVID too, the consumer's ever changing, and it's almost hard to like keep track. Are you guys seeing that as well? I mean, even little things like Ozempic, you know what I mean? Like things can come into the market and sort of change everything pretty quickly. Do you guys see that as well? And is your team like agile enough to hopefully handle that? Yes.
I mean, we see it quite a bit. I would say that if I'm being 1,000% honest, and this is a safe space, our team I don't think is quite equipped and there to handle it yet on like a Williams front. I think on Alex, since we're building him from the base, the team that we have for FanCapital support Alex is very agile and nimble. I would just argue that there's less cooks in the kitchen, right? There's his manager, his social media manager, and then arguably 2 or 3 content people that are publishing. So we're extremely agile on Alex's platform. On the Williams platform, we still have individuals that have been working at Williams for 5, 10, 15, 20 years that have an old mentality of F1 and an old mentality on how those rules work and how rights work and all of those other fun things that play into the mix. So since COVID, we've seen a drastic difference in how people consume media and how people are watching the race. A lot of us in sponsorship value are tied to how much the car is shown on screen on any given weekend. And as a Williams employee, I can tell you that because we're at the back of the pack, we're not shown that often. So for us, it's how do we take those fans and consumers post-COVID and give them something that they can actually latch onto? And because there's a big boom in traveling to races and things, but oftentimes races are out of monetary reach for individuals, especially after COVID. We've seen those go down while having a Williams mission to still engage fans beyond what I would call the millionaires or the billionaires of the world, which essentially F1 historically has been a billionaire's playground. So how do we make it accessible to the normal everyday fan? And that's really, really big for us at Williams, and having that agility to be able to move that fan to be younger, maybe a little bit less income, but have touch points that don't require as high a monetary value.
Yeah, I think for us, a lot of like the biggest change, of course, with COVID, we saw our sales in digital spike. So delivery was a big thing. BK was still like finding our way with the digital world. So we had to pull major efforts from in restaurant to delivery and pickup, but nothing new there. What I think has been challenging for us, and we're very mindful being a fast food brand, is the need of bringing more and more value given the changes that we've been having in the current days, with everything being so much more expensive. And how do we make sure that with supply going much more pricier, how do we keep our price in the same range of price that our guests are used to? So I think there's a ultimate constant competition of within this industry of which brand will be able to provide the best value for your buck. And this is what we're so conscious nowadays, and is mostly the conversation that we see within our brands, but also in the industry with whatever everybody's launching out there. So I think as of now, that is our main topic, our main concern as a whole. How do we keep our sales relevant, our traffic relevant with this scenario that we're all living in?
In our case, consumers changed the way they behaved post-COVID. So during COVID, we were all chefs. We learned how to bake, how to cook. We were making recipes all the time. So it was very convenient to have Campbell soup, etc., as a base. And the snacks at home. So now that everyone is outside, we need on-the-go packs. We need also food to be able to take to the office or whatever. So that's one piece on like the on the go, and the other is on how what flavors people are wanting. So it's really popular right now, like all the spicy flavors. Everyone is craving these bold flavors, so we need to go and hop in that trend. And it's not only a trend; it's like we're tired of eating the same flavors. So we're innovating, and after COVID, people are wanting to experience new things. So it's the cravings they have with chocolate, cookies. So how we offer things that they really want to eat, and at the same time different flavors, so we can be relevant and they can buy us. So I think COVID transformed the way that brands think, and we need to act fast.
Cool. Thanks, y'all. Any questions?
The short one or the long one? The short one. Where do I get spicy goldfish?
Gotta go to Mexico. Right?
No, it's an in and out. So we have with Frank's, the sauce. So give me your email and I'll just ping you when it's in.
Amazing. Okay. The other question. So, cultural relevancy, right? You mentioned Bud Light, and I'm just wondering what's your framework around anything geopolitical or sort of bigger picture, and how do you prep? What looks different in an election year as you look at the back half of the year? Do you just stay away from all of it, or how do you think about what to do, if anything, around that?
I can jump in. And we have a really vocal audience base, which makes it really challenging because people expect us to show up for them. We had it with the conflict in the Middle East. I was in calls every morning with our Middle East team and our US team and our UK. So you can't please everybody. We are a values-driven organization, and it's something that we like drill down from the leadership team all the way to the lowest level employee, and we just use those as our guiding light, period. So our community know our values, like everything we do. We're always going to be an inclusive space for everybody. There is no space, no one will be turned away from a barriers ever if they respect our values. And I think as we're kind of gearing up for election year, that's what we're doing, and just trying to create a safe space. And yeah, I mean, we don't touch it from like a social media standpoint, right? But like our studio teams, we do a lot of like education with them, a lot from the DEIB perspective to make sure that they are able to have conversations around our values at the client level.
How do you measure cultural relevance? How you connect it with business?
Say it a little louder. A little louder? Sorry.
How you measure cultural relevance?
Yep.
And how you connect it with business performance?
Okay. Do you hear that? Connecting cultural relevance with business performance. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for us, it's a very big matter of how do we take what is culturally relevant, and turn it into tangibility. And what I mean by that is, and I'll harken back to what I said at the beginning, which is how do we understand that, like, we know gamers are big. We know a lot of sponsors and marketers are after a gaming audience because they're designed to come back at a consistent basis. So that for us is the culturally relevant nugget we pull out. And then how do we build things that solve that problem? And then we can measure the performance of those things, right? So we measure the performance of how many people come back to our platform, how many people are starting a race every weekend, how many people are tuning into our live feed every weekend. And so that's how we are tangibly figuring out how many people are actually buying into the, what I would call a big bet that we've made, right? Because building our gamification platform wasn't a small item. It took over a year, and we still make tweaks to it on a weekly, monthly, annual basis to stay relevant at that point. But how do we take what those really insights are and actually turn them into something actionable that we can build something tangible for? Otherwise, they're just in the ether, and you're not really building anything off of those.
I think for that, like, I'll be very specific. Social tools, how many mentions, impressions, sentiment. Is there a lot of mentions? We have a threshold. Like, if a certain threshold goes up, like, this is worth jumping in. Is there's a lot of mentions, a lot of impressions. Is the sentiment good? Like, is this going to be a good conversation to be part of? Then we're going to see a way to jump in. So just being very tactical to your question of how we measure cultural relevance, we use it through social tools. And then we find ways in creatively to drive the business.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you guys. That was great. Seriously. So good.